Hey guys, left a comment on Dan Electro 16's, I think that's what it is, channel, or Neil's channel, and about powder coating. And I said I kind of gave up on it, and I figured I'd show you some of the results that I had with it. A lot were good, and some were more marginal. Now, the hood hinges that you can't see very well here, those are all powder coated, including the springs. Some spring manufacturers do not recommend powder coating their springs because I guess it basically anneals them and wrecks the heat treating of them. The parking brake assembly on this thing, quite a lot of the components that I did quite a few years ago that are now in this truck were all powder coated. Like the parking brake assembly here was all powder coated. Now that did mean that I had to remove all of the rubber bits. Like there's a rubber bit right there that you can see is being held in by that socket head cap screw. And I had to remove the rivet that was here, and there's actually a bolt there that I actually have to put a nylock on now that I think about it, because I had to remove that piece of plastic. I probably could have split it and taken it off without taking that off. Obviously the plastic brake release handle had to come off as well. That was not powder coated, nor was that. You can see the color difference there. Brake pedal assembly and the bracket here that mounts to the firewall, that was all powder coated, and that all turned out very, very well. This was painted, but this, which is the part that goes up under here, I forget which way it actually goes, I think it goes that way, but in either case, that's powder coated as well, and it turned out quite well, except for cat footprints on it. That's right. And I think that's about it that's readily visible in here. That's powder coated. Now, some of the things I had marginal success with was outdoors. Now, what I've got here is my well box for the well, and this piece here was to cover up and surround this piece, which was just, you know, they just had spray foam in there and it would crumble out. That was powder coated, and I actually went and, when I was doing some tiling, I mortared around it just to use up the mortar. But that is holding up not too bad. This piece here, that piece was, now that I can't remember for sure. I think that might have been powder coated. I can't remember for sure. No, you know what? Definitely wasn't. It's too big. So that was painted, that was just painted, primed and painted. You can see how well that's holding up because that was done at the same time that this was, which this was definitely powder coated, this piece here. So you can see it's not, well, it's all covered with dirt and such, but this has been exposed to the elements and it's already rusting through. Well, not perforating, but it's got certainly surface rust on it. Those have to be on there because the dogs pull the things off, of all things, if you can believe that. Okay, now, that would have been probably 4 years ago. I did the well hatches there. Now this truck, the stuff I did on it was done around 6 years ago. And it's probably held up the worst of all. Because when I bought this truck, hang on a sec. When I bought this truck, I had to pull the engine to, well, I just pulled the engine anyways, but I pulled the engine to replace the cam and lifters that were just completely obliterated. Now, you can't see too well here, but the valve covers were, if I can get this in here, were powder coated. Now, they actually don't look too bad from what I can see of the camera. Now, granted, it's been plenty coated with oil, so they had a bit of protection there. I'll go around to the other side. That one you can see is got a fair bit of surface rust on it as well. And so this is what happens when they're, you know, exposed to typical road use. Now the oil pan was powder coated as well, and hopefully I can get under there. And you can see it. And there isn't much to see for powder coating, but boy, that thing must have leaked a fair bit of oil. I always thought it burned it. I guess it leaks it. Anyways, maybe you can see better from the front. We can get past the leaking steering box here. Now, you can see that also is rusting there, but it's all surface rust. Certainly not as bad as that F350 that I got sitting right next to this one, but nevertheless, it's showing some surface rust. I can't really see the screen, so I don't know what you're actually seeing, but nevertheless, I'm panning it around here. So that's how that holds up after about 6 years. That was all these parts on this truck. I used zinc phosphate on them, and then neutralized it, and then powder coated them immediately. And I always pre-bake my parts, especially anything that's been in contact with oil, to ash up the any oil residue that's on it before I actually even try to attempt to powder coat it. And basically that was the result. So that was, I think I did a pretty good job on that, but nevertheless it did still rust. Now I was just thinking about it, and I got some other pieces that I powder coated as well, and they're in the container actually, so I guess I can't be bothered to open that up. So let's see what else I got in the shop here. I'll pause you guys and go and find it. So here's the light buckets. These were powder coated. These have all been sitting inside. You can see I got a nice finish on them. Remains to be seen how well these are going to hold up. But all of these got the same treatment of phosphating them and heating them and then powder coating them. Most of these parts in here were powder coated, but obviously none of this stuff has been on a vehicle. Yeah, all this stuff was powder coated, so it looks good, but I'm not 100% convinced of how well it will hold up. Now here's something that was powder coated. I do get a bit of moisture in here, and obviously some snow blew past and settled into the lowest part of this, and as you can see, it rusted. And this was powder coated, same treatment. This wasn't a great piece in the first place, but it was rust neutralized first. This is another piece. I think it looks okay if I washed it. Let's see. No, you know what? That is surface rust there as well. So they're not holding up that great for having just sat inside and been exposed to humidity. Fan as well. This is actually a 6-cylinder fan. Doesn't look too bad. That was, apart from an oil pan, that was probably one of the bigger things I've attempted to powder coat. And that's probably it. I don't think I have anything else that is worth showing here. But, that's one example of, some things. Here's another thing. This was powder coated. It's a fan pulley. It was on the truck, but the truck was never on the road at the time it was on. And as you can see, it's already showing some surface rust at the interface of the, the two sections of pulley right here. You can see something. So I can't say I'm particularly impressed with powder coating. I never did try this stuff that I bought that was specifically to address this sort of situation, which was, there's this company called Columbia Coatings in the States that I bought most of my supplies from. I think I even got my powder coating gun from them, which is basically a clone of the Chicago Electric one that you can get from Harbor Freight. One of the types of powder, like I got quite a big collection of powder here, was it was a zinc primer. So basically it was a primer you'd apply and bake it, and then you could just paint over top of it. But I never actually got around to trying it. It was supposed to be rich in zinc, and as a result was supposed to be very durable. Here's caps for powder coating that I've used. They're for capping over lines on things like that. Here's plugs to fill up holes if you don't have a bolt that you'd want to stick in there. Obviously you can see I haven't used this stuff for a while. There's quite a coating of dust on some of this stuff. And that's not powder coating dust, that's just whatever, probably overspray from whenever I was painting in here. I did at one point build this giant powder coating oven that I think we've seen in my videos before. I might never have explained it, but nevertheless, 3 elements in it. Temperature controller and a small circulating fan at the bottom to act like kind of convection heat, but it doesn't exactly circulate a lot of air. There's also lights at the top. If you're curious about the construction of it, Eastwood has forums, and on that forum I got my ideas for how to build this thing. Now it probably looks pretty crude, but what it is steel. You know the steel, what do they call it? Basically like steel 2x4s that you use when you're building, oftentimes they use in office structures. This is the floor plate for it, but this is the same sort of stuff here. I built it out of that and either welded or spot welded it together, depending upon at what point my spot welder burned out on me. And that actually made for a very, very solid structure. The insulation I used was Roxol insulation, and the reason why I used their stuff is it's a mineral wool, I guess they call it, not the fiberglass pink stuff, because this mineral wool has a much, much higher temperature tolerance. I believe it's supposed to be good to 1100 degrees, whereas that pink bat stuff has a much lower rating, which I actually don't know, so I can't give you a number on that. The interior, I got too much junk piled in front of it, but the interior is lined with 14 gauge, but the exterior is just roofing sheeting, 30 gauge roof sheeting that I bent and riveted to the steel 2x4's frame. There's no wood in it. All of the wiring is high temperature appliance wiring that's specifically for that. You can get that from any place that does, you might be able to get it from Home Depot, but I doubt it. But any place that has anything to do with kilns, like for pottery, they'll have that kind of appliance wire. Light fixtures that I got in there are porcelain, not plastic, obviously, because you get up to 350 or 400 degrees. I can't remember even what the baking temperatures are anymore. It's been that long since I've done it. The elements that I use as heaters are just standard stove elements, and I just basically went to a hardware store. I saw 3 of the cheapest ones I could get, what the watt rating was for it, and picked those up. Don't remember what the watt rating was for it. Each one of those is not directly controlled by that controller that you see here. Each one of them has, I believe I went overkill on it, and I went and each one of those, the top, middle, and bottom, is controlled by a 30 amp contactor that's right mounted on the back of the unit here, and it's just basically you got the control voltage going to the back. I just use conduit to run all my lines on the outside, big power switch on the back. I have no idea how well this thing would have worked because I never ever actually powered it up. At the top is a vent for it. I put a rack, like if you've seen the sliding garage door track that they typically use on barns, I put a length of that so that I could hang stuff from it up there and wheel it out. That's probably about it for that. I kind of go back and forth on the idea. I never should have built that big powder coating oven. I should have just stuck to, I had a small oven that I used for most of my work, and I should have just stuck with that, and that was a much, much smaller setup and was nowhere near as, cumbersome as that thing is. That thing occupies, an enormous amount of space. I can't sell it because obviously there's some liability for electrical liability there, and I really don't want to strip it down because I think I probably spent around $700-800 on that thing. Now I'm just waiting for a cat to come around because I heard something is in the fireplace again, so I just wanted to see if somebody was interested in it. No, she's not anywhere around. Anyways, that's it for the powder coating talk. I'm gonna move on to the truck. Hopefully, you know, friends are supposed to be coming by to pick up the last of the hay because the Mennonites turned it this morning, and I thought they were gonna bale today, and they didn't, luckily for us. And hopefully they'll pick up all that hay. We can clean up the top of the barn and get that ready for the Mennonites to do their baling today. But I was kind of hoping that I might get a little bit more work on this, but we'll see how we go.